The camera panned across the busy airport terminal, zooming in on a woman juggling a toddler on her hip and dragging a small suitcase. Sometimes fate has a twisted sense of humor, the narrator's voice intoned. And sometimes, what begins as a prank becomes something that lives forever. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more real stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Sarah Matthews adjusted her daughter Emma on her hip, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. The 6 a.m. flight to Chicago had seemed like a good idea when she booked it, cheaper fare, arriving with plenty of daylight left, but after Emma's midnight tantrum and the rushed morning preparation, she was already regretting the decision. Final boarding call for Flight 372 to Chicago O'Hare, the announcement crackled over the speakers. Sarah hurried toward the gate, her heart sinking as she saw the long line. Emma began to fuss, squirming in her arms. "Shoo, baby, just a little longer," she whispered, bouncing the toddler gently. The woman behind the counter gave her a sympathetic smile as she scanned Sarah's boarding pass. "We've had a slight seating change, Ms. Matthews," the gate agent said. "You'll be in 14C instead of your original seat." Sarah nodded gratefully, too tired to question the change. She just wanted to get on the plane and hopefully coax Emma into a nap during the flight. As she made her way down the aisle, Sarah spotted her seat, next to a man in a crisp business suit who was typing furiously on his laptop. He glanced up briefly, his expression shifting from concentration to something like dismay when he saw Emma. "Excuse me," Sarah said softly. "I think I'm sitting here." The man nodded curtly and stood to let her in, his movements stiff and reluctant. Sarah settled Emma on her lap, feeling the familiar weight of judgment from her seatmate. Single mothers always seem to face this, the assumption that their children would be disruptive, that they somehow didn't belong in certain spaces. "I'm Sarah," she offered, trying to break the ice. "Michael," he replied, his tone clipped as he returned to his laptop. Behind them, 2 flight attendants exchanged knowing glances. Jenna nudged her colleague Lisa and whispered, "Think the plan will work?" Lisa suppressed a smile. "We'll see." Jake in scheduling thought it would be funny to seat the frazzled single mom next to the uptight single dad. Said they both could use some perspective. What the flight attendants didn't know was that Michael Donovan wasn't just any businessman. And what had started as a well-intentioned prank by the airline staff was about to become much more complicated. Emma began to fuss as the plane taxied toward the runway. Sarah rummaged through her bag for a pacifier, her movements growing increasingly frantic as Emma's whimpers threatened to escalate into full-blown wails. Michael watched from the corner of his eye, his jaw tightening. Just as Emma drew breath for what promised to be an impressive scream, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small, colorful toy. "May I?" he asked, holding it out to Sarah. Surprised, she nodded. Michael gently offered the toy to Emma, who immediately grabbed it, her cries forgotten as she examined the new treasure. "Thank you," Sarah said, relief washing over her. "That was a lifesaver." Michael's expression softened slightly. "I keep a few things on hand." Force of habit. "You have kids?" Sarah asked, curiosity piqued by this unexpected kindness. A shadow crossed his face. "A daughter. She's with her mother now." The plane lifted off, and Sarah felt the familiar pressure in her ears. Emma, thankfully distracted by the toy, didn't seem bothered by the ascent. "How old is she?" "Your daughter?" Sarah asked, trying to maintain the fragile connection. 6, Michael replied, his voice softening. Lily would be 6 now. Something in his tone, the would-be, made Sarah's heart constrict. She recognized the language of loss, having used similar phrases herself after her husband's death. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to pry." Michael shook his head. "It's fine. It's been 2 years since the accident. My wife and I, we couldn't stay together afterward. Some griefs are too heavy to share." The plane reached cruising altitude, and the seatbelt sign dinged off. Emma had fallen asleep in Sarah's arms, her small face peaceful. "She looks like a good kid," Michael said, nodding toward Emma. "She is," Sarah smiled. "Most of the time. It's been just the two of us since her father died when I was still pregnant. Some days are harder than others." Michael's expression changed, a new understanding dawning. "I'm sorry for your loss. And I apologize if I seemed unwelcoming earlier. Business trips make me tense." "No apology needed," Sarah assured him. "I know traveling with a toddler isn't everyone's idea of a pleasant flight." As the flight progressed, their conversation flowed more easily. Sarah learned that Michael was heading to Chicago for a meeting with potential investors for his company, a non-profit organization that developed safety technology for children's car seats. After Lily, he explained, his voice steady but his eyes revealing the pain beneath, "I couldn't go back to corporate law. I needed to do something that might prevent other parents from experiencing what we did." Sarah listened, moved by his transformation of grief into purpose. "That's incredible work," she said sincerely. "What about you?" Michael asked. "What takes you to Chicago?" "A job interview," Sarah admitted. "I've been working remotely as a graphic designer since Emma was born, but this position would mean stability, benefits, a real future for us. My sister lives in Chicago and can help with childcare." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "Which company?" When Sarah named the firm, his eyebrows rose. "Hartwell Design Group?" "That's interesting. You know them?" Sarah asked, surprised. In a manner of speaking, Michael replied cryptically. "They're a good firm." The flight attendant approached with the beverage cart, interrupting their conversation. Jenna smiled as she served them, noting with satisfaction how the initial tension between the passengers had dissolved. "See," she whispered to Lisa as they moved down the aisle. "The scheduling prank worked. They're actually talking." Lisa glanced back at the pair. "There's something about that guy, though. He looks familiar." As the flight continued, Sarah and Michael shared more of their stories. She told him about her struggle to balance work and motherhood, about the guilt she felt at not being able to provide more for Emma, about her hopes for the future. He spoke of his journey through grief, of learning to be present again in a world that had lost its color, of the purpose he'd found in his work. Emma woke as they began their descent into Chicago, cranky and disoriented. Before Sarah could react, Michael pulled out another toy from his briefcase, this one a small, plush animal that made gentle sounds when squeezed. "May I?" he asked again, and at Sarah's nod, he offered it to Emma. The toddler's face lit up, and she reached for it eagerly. "You're good with her," Sarah observed. Michael's smile was tinged with sadness. "I used to practice a lot." As they prepared for landing, Michael hesitated, then said, "About your interview with Hartwell, would you mind if I gave you some advice?" "Not at all," Sarah replied, curious. Their creative director, Thomas, values innovation over convention. "Don't be afraid to show them your most daring work, even if it seems risky." Sarah looked at him with surprise. "How do you know that?" Before Michael could answer, the plane touched down with a slight bump, and Emma squealed with delight at the sensation. As they taxied to the gate, Michael seemed to come to a decision. He pulled a business card from his wallet and handed it to Sarah. "I'd like to hear how your interview goes," he said. "And maybe we could meet for coffee while you're in Chicago?" "With Emma, of course." Sarah took the card, a warmth spreading through her chest at the unexpected connection. Then she looked down at the name embossed on the heavy cardstock, and her breath caught. Michael Donovan, CEO, Hartwell Group. Her eyes flew to his, wide with shock. You own the company I'm interviewing with?" Michael nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. "I acquired it last year. It's part of a larger portfolio now, but I try to stay hands-off with the creative departments." "Why didn't you say something earlier?" Sarah asked, her mind racing. At first, I didn't make the connection, Michael admitted. And then I was enjoying just being Michael, not the CEO. Not the grieving father or the divorced husband or any of the other labels that usually define me. The plane reached the gate, and passengers began to stand, gathering their belongings. Emma reached for Michael's tie, and he let her grab it, smiling at the toddler's fascination with the silky material. "I won't influence your interview," Michael promised. "The creative team makes their own decisions." "But I meant what I said about coffee." Sarah studied his face, seeing sincerity in his eyes. "I'd like that," she said finally. As they disembarked, the flight attendants watched them walk together down the jetway, Emma now comfortable enough to reach for Michael when Sarah needed to adjust her bag. "Looks like our little seating arrangement worked out," Jenna said smugly. Lisa was staring after them, recognition finally dawning. "Do you know who that is?" she hissed. "That's Michael Donovan." The Michael Donovan, the tech investor who lost his daughter in that terrible accident a few years ago. It was all over the news. Jenna's smugness faded to shock. "Oh my God. And we seated him next to a single mom with a toddler as a joke? That's awful." "Maybe not," Lisa said thoughtfully, watching as Michael helped Sarah navigate the crowded terminal. "Maybe it was exactly what he needed." 3 months later, Sarah sat at her desk at Hartwell Design Group, putting the finishing touches on a campaign that had already generated buzz in the industry. Her phone chimed with a message from Michael. "Still on for the park this afternoon?" Emma requested that airplane man bring ice cream. Sarah smiled, typing back a confirmation. Her interview had gone well, she'd gotten the job on her own merits, as Michael had promised. But what had started as an awkward airplane encounter had evolved into something neither of them had expected. They weren't rushing into anything. They were both carrying too much history, too much pain for that. But there was something healing in their friendship, in the way Emma lit up around Michael, in the way he seemed more present, more alive when they were together. At the airport across town, Jenna and Lisa prepared for another flight, unaware of how their small prank had rippled outward, creating unexpected connections. "You know," Lisa said as they checked the passenger manifest, "I wonder whatever happened with that single mom and Michael Donovan." Jenna shrugged. "Who knows? But I like to think something good came of it." Something good had indeed come of it, not a fairy tale ending, but something real and honest, two people learning to trust again, to hope again, to see possibilities where before there had been only loss. As Sarah closed her laptop and prepared to meet Michael and Emma at the park, she thought about how life's most meaningful connections often come when we least expect them, sometimes even disguised as inconveniences or challenges. What had begun as a thoughtless joke by airline staff had become the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. And sometimes, that's all any of us really need, not a perfect ending, but a new beginning, a chance to rewrite our stories with hope instead of fear, with connection instead of isolation, with love instead of loss. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more content that reminds us of the unexpected ways our lives can change in an instant, and how sometimes, the person sitting next to you might just be the one who helps you find your way home.